Welcome to Midweek Space Startup News. So I'm just going to go over a few Space Startup News articles I've come across this week. We have an X account at Space Startup Hub, so you can follow us on there as well. So let's get into the first article this week. So this is on SpaceForest, which is a Polish space startup, and they announced a launch date for their Perun rocket return to flight. So let's just read some of the highlighted notes I've made on this article. So it says SpaceForest has announced that the third flight of its Perun rocket will take place on the 22nd of November. That is 4 days ago. It's an 11.5 meter suborbital rocket designed to be capable of carrying payloads of up to 50 kilos, that's just over 100 pounds, to an altitude of 150 kilometers. So it's flown twice already in 2023, and both of those flights experienced anomalies. So SpaceForest has announced the first of 3 qualification flights, which will take place on the 22nd of November from Poland's Central Air Force Test Range in Uska. And they're going to say here that SpaceForest will look to complete the second of its 4th qualification flights before the end of the year, targeting an altitude of 80 kilometers. They will then attempt their first space shot, aiming to reach an altitude of 100 kilometers, the recognized edge of space known as a Kármán line. The rocket's full performance is capable of an altitude of 150 kilometers, and flights are expected in 2026. So that's the first article, but obviously the 22nd of November has already passed. So we have another article, if I'll just bring up. This article says that the Polish consortium successfully tested 3-stage suborbital rocket. They go on to say the rocket reached a planned altitude of 65 kilometers, achieving all of the flight's intended objectives. And the Polish rocket builder SpaceForest has not yet confirmed it publicly, but reports indicate that the company completed the first successful flight of its Perun suborbital rocket on the 22nd of November. So the reports that it refers to is this Polish website here, put myself in the corner. So I've translated this from Polish to English, and we can see here it says successful launch of the Polish Perun rocket. And it says SpaceForest successfully launched the Perun suborbital rocket from the Central Air Force Training Ground in Uska. This was the 3rd flight of the rocket. So we have a few images. This is the spaceport here, then you can see the rocket. And we also have this image from before the launch. So you can see the Perun, it says Perun on the side there. And then from the Polish side, we have this. So it looks like the same rocket, got the orange bit there, it says Perun on the side. And this is the flight. So everything looks good. They've announced a deal to fly from this spaceport in Santa Monica off the coast of Portugal. They also have an agreement to launch from an off-site location in the North Sea. This is in collaboration with Eurospaceport. They've already got a number of agreements for spaceports. They're actively testing the rocket. They're going to higher altitude. This one's 65, then 80, then 100, then 150. And we have some specs on the rocket, for bringing the specs up. So here it says 50 kilo payload, that's just over 100 pounds. Maximum apogee is 150 kilometers, and you get a pretty good 0G environment. It's 11.5 meters tall, diameter is 45 centimeters, and liftoff weight is just under a ton. We also have the flight profile from the website. So you can see here that it can reach an apogee of 150 kilometers, and you get a certain amount of micro Gs here. I'm not sure exactly what the timing is, but you get probably a couple of minutes of 0G, which could be very useful for certain kind of payloads. And then there's parachutes, and you can recover a payload. So that's SpaceForest with their Perun rocket, a Polish space startup. So hopefully we'll be hearing more about them later this year, and then into 2026 when they launch from their spaceports in the North Sea and Santa Maria. Okay, on to our second news story, and this is on Isar Aerospace. So this is a post on their official X account, and it says, "We're bringing progress and ambition back to Europe. Spectrum stages for Flight 2 have arrived at our launch pad at Andoya Space, gearing up for pre-flight testing." The Spectrum is their launch vehicle, and there's a few images of it here. It's a 2-stage vehicle that's flown once already from Andoya Spaceport in Norway. And we can actually see, if I bring up the video, we can see the first flight. It was quite a short flight, but it's the very first time it had launched, so it's to be expected. So it lifts off from Andoya spaceport, and initially everything looks great. It's going straight up, but pretty quickly you can see things start to go wrong. It starts to wobble, and it's moving from side to side. You can see that's not what it should be doing, and then it just pitches over completely. Yeah, that's it then. And then it crashes into the sea shortly afterwards, although you don't see that on the video. But we do have a still frame, so that's what happened shortly afterwards. So the first flight lasted about 30 seconds, but it's a brand new space startup. There's probably thousands of things that can go wrong. So now they have the flight hardware for the second vehicle, and they're working on the third vehicle as well. So we actually do have the video. We'll bring up the video from that X-Post and we'll just look at it. So this is a Spectrum vehicle. There it is. That's the first flight. It has first, second stage, the engines, everything's assembled, and now it's being transported from Germany to Norway. And there it is on the way. And then it's arriving at the spaceport in Norway. So they're getting ready now to qualify the engines and the vehicle ready for the second flight. And hopefully they'll have more success on the second flight. But we have more news about Isar Aerospace. First of all, let's look at some of the payloads. This is from Grok. I asked Grok to list some of the payloads. So they have payloads going all the way back to 2021. They have contracts for payloads anyway, up to 2025 when I did the query. But since then, they have even more contracts. So let's bring up this article here. Isar Aerospace secures launch agreements with ESA, the European Space Agency, and this is in August 2025, a few months ago. Contract covers the launch of 2 missions aboard Spectrum from 2026 onwards, and this is part of the European Flight Ticket Initiative. The first launch agreements between a privately funded European launch service provider and European institutions. Both missions will be launched from Isar Aerospace's dedicated launch pad at Andoya spaceport in Norway and are scheduled from 2026 onwards. So then we have another article here. This is from the Isar Aerospace website. This one says, and this is September 2025, Isar Aerospace and Orspace sign launch agreement. Isar Aerospace will launch 2 Orspace satellites aboard its Spectrum launch vehicle in 2026 from Andoya spaceport. Further flights are planned for 2026 and 2027. And the CEO of Orspace says, Isar Aerospace is the ideal partner to help Orspace provide fast and flexible in-orbit demonstration services to our customers. And one more news article from their website, bring that up. Isar Aerospace signs launch agreement with US-based SEOPS for dedicated mission. This is November 2025, so this is about a week ago. A US-based integration and mission services provider, dedicated mission scheduled in 2028. Spectrum will deploy multiple payloads into a low Earth orbit from its dedicated launch complex at Andoya spaceport in Norway. And the executive vice president at SEOP says, securing Spectrum capacity with Isar Aerospace is driven by customer demand and giving our customers greater control and choice in how and where their missions reach orbit. So Isar Aerospace is one of the top funded European space startups. It has over 400 million euros in funding. I think the only other space startup I can think of that has that kind of funding is the exploration company that are working on the Nix cargo vehicle. Those two are really very well funded at the moment. So hopefully we'll see progress. We'll see the Spectrum vehicle fly. I don't know if it'll be this year or early next year. And they certainly have plenty of contracts next year in 2026, going up to 2028. So fingers crossed they can make some progress. Next, we move on to Rocket Lab. That's been in the news recently. And we have this article from Eric Berger at Ars Technica. So the article says that the Neutron is the medium launch vehicle from Rocket Lab, and it's now going to debut in mid-2026. It was expected to launch in the second half of 2025, but it looks like there's been delays. So let's just have a look at the article. Peter Beck, who's the CEO of Rocket Lab, says that the company's medium-lift launch vehicle Neutron would not launch this year. The delay does not come as a surprise. It's been clear for months that a slip into 2026 was inevitable, and now it looks like it's going to be the first quarter of next year. We've seen what happens when others rush to the pad with an unproven product And we just refuse to do that, he said. Our aim is to make it to orbit on the first try. You won't see us using some qualifier about us just clearing the pad and claiming success and whatnot. And that means that we don't want to learn something during Neutron's first flight that could be learned on the ground during the testing phase, unquote. He then goes on to say, now at Rocket Lab, we have a proven process for delivering and developing complex spaceflight hardware, and I think that process speaks for itself with respect to our hardware. Always looking beautiful and, more importantly, always working beautifully. Now our process is meticulous, but it works. If we think about how many others have tried to develop a launcher, the results have been extremely poor, he said. Well, that's pretty harsh, but he's not wrong. There's very few space startups that have managed to launch a rocket and to become operational and to build up a good launch cadence. Really, it's just SpaceX and Rocket Lab. Everyone else, when they fly, only fly 1 or 2 or 3 times a year, or very low cadence, if at all. Customers want to see a long list of successful flights, one after the other, before risking their payloads on that rocket. Those who have failed to deliver are numerous. Basically, every new space startup company except Rocket Lab and SpaceX have failed to build an orbital rocket that is scaled to any kind of launch cadence and is reliable. Yeah, I think he's true with that. I mean, Firefly Aerospace has launched 6 times, only 2 of those completely successfully. New Glenn has launched twice now, but the cadence is quite low, and that will increase over time, of course. Neutron's first launch will be a demonstration flight with no customer payloads, so the total cost will likely be in the order of $400 million due to delays. So that's the article on Neutron and its delay to 2026. We see here, this is Wallops. We see here Wallops Island. This is where we're launching from on the east coast of the US. And you can see the launch pad here, and we get a closer image here. So this is the Neutron launch pad. You can see the water tower. And Rocket Lab is developing this medium launch vehicle for constellation operators. They've already received some contracts, although they're not disclosing by who. We have this graphic here on the specs. So it's 43 meters tall, 7 meter diameter. The fairing diameter is 5 meters, and the payload is 13 tons, which is less than Falcon 9, which is about 21, 22 tons. But still 13 tons is a substantial amount of mass you can put into orbit. And most launches are volume constrained, not mass constrained. One interesting thing about Rocket Lab, as I bring up this video, is that the fairing just opens and then closes, and the whole thing comes back. The first stage and the fairing payload comes back. The second stage is expended. You can see the flaps, so it does return back to the launch site. You can see the flaps being tested there. And I think in the moment you'll see the payload fairing open. There you go. And then the second stage flies out. The payload fairing closes afterwards, and the whole thing comes back. So this is a new design for the payload fairing. It means Rocket Lab can have a high flight cadence as the whole first stage, all the engines and the payload fairing return. So they simply have to produce new second stages. We have another video here. This is like the launch of the launch video for Neutron. That's Sir Peter Beck, the CEO, and he's introducing the new medium launch vehicle. New engines for this vehicle. I can see it take off now from the launch pad. Then for deployment, the payload fairing opens. The second stage flies out, deploying the payload. And then the first stage returns back, using the fins to guide it back to the launch pad. And it's very lightweight, it's carbon composite. And then a landing burn. And a soft touchdown back on the landing pad. So that's the concept of operations for the Neutron vehicle. And 13 tons to low Earth orbit. So yeah, that will be launching hopefully in 2026, in the middle of 2026. And while we're talking about Rocket Lab, they're branching out, putting payloads to low Earth orbit. They proposed to NASA a Mars sample return. NASA did ask for commercial proposals for a Mars sample return mission. The budget from NASA was something like $11 billion, which was far too much, would take too long. So they looked for commercial proposals, and Rocket Lab proposed one. And the latest US administration is looking for a commercial Mars telecommunications orbiter satellite, and Rocket Lab has proposed their own Mars telecommunications orbiter. And let's have a look at the proposal on their website. So this is the Mars telecommunications orbiter. The future of human Mars exploration begins with communications. And they say it will be a foundational step towards establishing a sustained human presence on Mars with robust real-time communications, enabling the first astronauts to safely set foot on the red planet and return while maintaining close contact with Earth. While past NASA flagship programs have faced costly delays and overruns, Rocket Lab offers a proven alternative. And then they go into all the specs and so on and the benefits. We do have a video for the MTO, the Mars Telecommunications Orbiter, if I can bring it up. Here it is. So we can see the Neutron vehicle launch the MTO, and then it flies. Well, first of all, it deploys its solar panels, and then it flies towards Mars. Then 6 months later, or whatever, it arrives around Mars, goes into orbit, and now it can relay communications from Mars, from the planet, from the surface, for rovers or astronauts or from within a habitat. So the communication goes to the satellite, and then from the satellite it goes back to Earth. So there's not direct to Earth transmission, you go via the MTO. So that's Rocket Lab's proposal for the Mars Telecommunications Orbiter. Other consortiums and companies will be bidding for this project. Okay, that's Rocket Lab. Let's move on to our final story this week. InnoSpace, a South Korean space startup. Let's bring up the X post here. So they say, Spaceward is the beginning of our journey to bring space closer for all. With a brief delay, the Hanbit Nano Spaceward mission continues to move forward with purpose and care. New launch date is the 17th of December 2025, that's Brazilian local time, and the launch window is 16th to the 22nd December 2025. The final launch time will be announced later. At the same time, our team remains steady, preparing each step with the responsibility that space deserves. We keep moving forward. And we have a video we can show here. Here is the Hanbit Nano vehicle on its way to the launch pad. And this is an orbital vehicle, and it will be launching from the Brazilian Alcantara spaceport for the first time next month. It should have launched this month, but there's been some brief delays, and now it's on the Transport Erector launcher made by InnoSpace themselves, and that puts it into the vertical position, ready for launch. And it has some payloads from Brazilian companies and universities, I believe. So hopefully that will launch next month. We also have a render here of what it will look like. So here it's a two-stage vehicle called the Hanbit Nano. This will be the first private rocket launch from South Korea. And then first stage separation. This is an expendable vehicle, so the first stage is expended. And we have the second stage ignite. Fairing separation. And then the deployment of payload, mission complete. So hopefully next month we'll see something like that. And it's launching from Alcantara spaceport in Brazil. So that is all the news this week, focused on small space startups. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.